Hey guys, this is Jon Blau with the Post and Courier. We're here for our weekly countdown to kickoff feature. This is one of several things we do that's just not in the newspaper. Along with that, we have a newsletter called the Tiger Take, where on a more daily basis, we kind of give you some analysis and anecdotes behind the scenes about covering Clemson and their season. Well, first of all, I got to tell you where to subscribe to the newsletter. It's at postandcourier.com/the Tiger Take if you want to have that. And if you're here now, you're here to listen to me talk to Tim Bourret, who's been on weekly. Tim, I think you're on mute, so you got to take yourself off there. Then I can ask you some questions. There you are. Hey, Tim, how you doing?
I'm doing fine.
Technology things we always
I know. Still learning.
Yeah. But yeah, we're here with Tim, the longtime former football sports information director for Clemson, to talk about this week's coming game. Also talk a little bit about the game we just watched. The first question I have for you, Tim, is that I asked about the offensive line in the press conference about, practice and if it's any different because they've had so many bodies they've lost. And then Dabo told me, well, it's actually running back where we have an issue, or losing guys. And I asked, who are those guys that you're kind of prepping to be emergency running backs? And he says that you need G5 top secret clearance to know that. Do you have top secret G5 clearance? Do you know who these guys are? Would you have to kill me if you told me?
I do not know, because I'm going to practice today and tomorrow, which isn't helping you for this podcast at all. So I'm not sure who that would be. Obviously, we've got a lot of guys who were good running backs in high school. Obviously, defensive backs, would come to mind, but I don't have that information, so I don't know. The fact, though, that he said that would, that implies that Maffa might not play, because if we got all three of the guys back, then I don't know why it would be any different than any other week. So I don't know. So we'll have to see. But Shipley sure played well over the weekend. Got a lot of touches, and you do have to wonder, if we are down a little bit, that if they're going to have him touch the ball that much, in particular on returns, he's done very well in the kickoff returns. You just wonder if you might have somebody else do that, because the risk of injury on returns is probably the greatest of any part of the game.
Yeah, I mean, Shipley's been an absolute workhorse. He just came back from an injury. It was a tibia, very top of his, around the knee area type of deal. And he's been working his way back to 100%. But the issue that, again, I brought up to Dabo was the lack of bodies, and he was talking about running backs. Shipley had to take most of the carries in practice that week. I mean, it was Kobe Pace was out. Obviously, they've lost Lynn J. Dixon and Mikey Dukes to the transfer portal. And so it was basically Shipley and Phil Maffa were the only guys even having reps in practice. So it's really, really crucial that Kobe Pace is back this week from COVID himself. And so they have two guys. Whether they have three is the question. But Will Shipley definitely working through some things and doing really well with it too. I don't know if I could be less than 100% and make some of the moves he made, Tim, but I guess that's why he's a 5-star running back.
Yeah, I'm real impressed with how hard he runs in between the tackles, and his football acumen. You see a lot of freshmen try to bounce it outside, and quite frankly, Maffa's done that a few times where he's lost a yardage. But Shipley is really a tough, straight ahead runner. That aspect of his game reminds me of Terry Allen. That's the way Terry Allen ran from the get-go when he was a freshman in '87, and then he was here for 3 years, had a terrific career, ended up with 2,778 yards, which could have been a lot more because he got hurt his junior year before he turned pro. He would have easily been a 3,000 yard rusher, but that's a guy that he reminds me of.
Yeah, he has that special ability to find the cutback lane and just put a foot in the ground and just hit it and get upfield in a way that sometimes it takes some younger running backs a second to kind of either see it or then kind of, adjust and make the cut. he just makes it all in like a split second. Just bam, he's in the hole. And that is again the Florida State game. That was one of the huge positives. Was again that the run game has improved. Obviously, some other issues they're going to have to clean up. There was a third quarter there that was a little messy, and then lost the lead in the fourth quarter. They had to have that drive where Shipley kind of runs it down the field. Well, you get a couple of penalties, and then Shipley helps out a lot with that 21-yard touchdown run. But going into Louisville, I guess, do we feel better about where the offense is? I mean, again, there was the great first half comparatively to the rest of the season. Third quarter was a little messy. Fourth quarter, they had a response drive. Do we feel better about the offense going into a game at Louisville?
Well, overall, I do, simply because, maybe we wouldn't have that attitude if Potter, who had missed only one kick all year, had made a 30-yarder and a 37-yard, field goal. If you had those two field goals into the scoring production, probably would have felt a lot better about where the offense, was. Now, and you can't take it away, but Uyungale's, fumble that led to a touchdown. That obviously was a key mistake, but hope that's not going to happen often. Although, the guy, let's see, he started 10 games now, and in those 5 of those 10 starts, the other team has scored a defensive touchdown. Not all his fault, but it has been odd that there've been that many defensive touchdowns. And made it frustrating, obviously, for the defense. You look back and the national media looks at that Pittsburgh game as well. They gave up 27 points and they had over 300 yards passing, but they still only scored 2 touchdowns against our defense, which I guess that's the max this year is 2 touchdowns, which is pretty amazing, and reason that Clemson is 3rd in the nation in scoring defense still as we head into this week.
Yeah, I mean, that a lot of those yards came on a final drive, couldn't get the ball back with under 8 minutes left. 7 of the points come from a shovel pass, interception, touchdown. The defense has been the one consistent, just championship level unit on this group. And that was expected just because of the experience they brought back. I mean, the defensive line, they've been able to lose Brian Brzee and other guys and be able to keep it consistent there. You have Bale Inspector and James Skalski. At linebacker, you have Nolan Turner, safety. They've played consistent. I think it's the points per game is probably about 15 something for Clemson. Do you have that, Tim? And it's only if you take away the touchdowns that the offense has scored for the other team, it's about 12.4 points per game, which would be right up there with Georgia right now.
Yeah, overall it's 15.3, and that includes the defensive scores, which is 3rd in the nation. I think it's 12.4 just against the defense. Georgia's in the 6 or 7 point category, which is unbelievable. They've been terrific. So, that's been an important part of things. Clemson is in total defense. Clemson's 20 there. It is kind of a wide variance now. 25th in total defense, but 3rd in scoring defense. And I hate to say it, the reason is because the offense has not been able to, keep the ball a lot, and the opposing offenses have had the ball a lot. As you're looking back at that NC State game when NC State ran 96 plays and Clemson only ran 49. They still only scored 14 points in regulation, but they did pile up, a lot of yards. And as you said, Pittsburgh did at the end of that game. Also, is just because, Clemson's defense understandably got, worn down. So it's just as much important for Clemson to move the ball, even if they don't score, to get some first downs, to give the defense, certainly some rest.
Yeah, and that's certainly what they did in the Florida State game. Other than, again, missed field goals, some mistakes, a couple of fumbles in the third quarter. But they continued to move the ball, which was extremely positive considering the fact you just lost Matt Bockhorst. The offensive line shuffled again. How are they going to be able to do? And then, Mason Trotter goes out. And Will Putnam's dealing with an ankle and has to come back in. I mean, they just dealt with so many things along that offensive line to continue the run game going the way it is. I mean, that gives them a huge chance to keep the offense going. They just have to be more. And this is the thing that Dabo Swinney was talking about, being on the road. And obviously, all three of their losses have come on the road, and they've won one game at Syracuse. They haven't been opportunistic enough on the road. I mean, when you think about the blown chances that they've had, again, Pittsburgh's the one that's freshest on the mind. That Will Shipley drop. Again, he's had a good game, I guess, more recently, so it doesn't feel as bad to bring up. The touchdown that could have been like a 60-yard touchdown to make it 14-0. Can't come through with it. They're going to have to be more opportunistic at Louisville. They can't let those things keep happening if you're going to win on a game on the road, right, Tim? It's just harder to win on the road.
No, you're exactly right. It's that way for most teams. But if you look at the 3 games Clemson's lost, with the defense has only given up 4 touchdowns in those 3 games. So you're going to have some close, ostensibly low scoring games, and to take advantage of that, you got to take advantage of some of your opportunities, as you said. Yeah, but that said, don't give the other team a touchdown by your offense. As much as we say we didn't take advantage of some opportunities on offense, we went the other direction, and we gave Pittsburgh a touchdown, we gave Georgia a touchdown. So that was the important reasons why those games were lost. But we are facing a team this week that defensively, they're kind of middle of the road in rush defense overall for the season, 46. But what really worries me about this game is that NC State could only get 44 yards rushing against Louisville this week. Now, Virginia only got 35 on them, but Virginia threw for 487. That's just what Virginia does. So I don't think that's a big deal. But obviously, Louisville has improved in their rush defense, and that's kind of been the positive of Clemson's offense, this year. I'll be honest with you, I've been shocked at how good Clemson's been able to run the ball in light of all the injuries, as you just said, losing Bockhorst and the other injuries, all the shuffling, and all the offensive line coaches that I've talked with over the years. The importance of consistency and cohesiveness and working together is so important in making your running game go. And, we just haven't had that. We've had just so many different starting lineups.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable. And when you talk about that cohesion, I mean, I guess one of the things, listening to Tony Elliott and Dabo Swinney talk about this Louisville defense, is they're very complicated. I mean, they'll have cover 3, but it will be about 12 different variations of cover 3 within it. They drop a lot of guys and play coverage, but recently they've been doing a lot of blitzing. They do a lot of movement. It's not a very big defensive front, but they're disruptive. And it sounds like a defense that, if you catch them in the wrong spot, blitzing, you might find a gap here or there that they're going to give you. It's kind of boom or bust. But it also tests the continuity of your offensive line. I mean, if you don't know how to pick up the slant, the twist, who's got who, it can be kind of a dangerous mix. So it will be a really interesting test there. And it seems like Louisville's offense is similar too, in terms of boom or bust. They have 2 plays of 90 plus yards. I think and Dabo Swinney was saying, I think it's 70 or 80, 70, 80, 90. I think they lead the nation in all of those in terms of big plays. So they're going to have to be able to shut those down. So it's kind of similar to last week. I feel like Florida State was a big play offense. They had to shut down the big play. It seems like, can Clemson get big plays in this game against Louisville, and can they stop Louisville from getting them themselves?
Yeah, you're 100% right. A couple of points on what you just said. Cunningham has 9 pass plays in his career of 70 yards or more, which is the most in Louisville history. And, they had a quarterback who was pretty good, who's good in the NFL now, named Lamar Jackson. So obviously that was something that he did not do. They had 5 plays of at least 30 yards last week against NC State, and they were by 5, either receiving or rushing, and they were by 5 different players. So obviously they're multifaceted when it comes to those big plays. And getting back to what you said about their defense and their blitzing, that might be the most improved area of their football team. Now, we didn't play last year because of the weird COVID schedule, but Louisville was 98th in the country in sacks last year by their defense. They're 27th in the country in that area this year. And you're right, they've gotten a lot of them recently. So yeah, there's going to have to be a lot of meetings, skull sessions, looking at film for the young Clemson offensive line this week.
Yeah. And then again, going back to that Louisville offense, you brought up Lamar Jackson. Dabo Swinney said that Malik Cunningham's Lamar-esque, and that he can do some of those things. Obviously, I think he did, know, I'm not saying he's Lamar Jackson. I mean, that's a pretty high bar to reach. Nobody's Lamar Jackson, not even in the NFL to a degree. So, but he is a guy, I've seen highlights of him where he can just get you in space and make a move, and just as good as a running back, pick up yards. I guess the one positive there for Clemson's defense is they have done a better job the last couple of times out against running quarterbacks like Garrett Schrader, Jordan Travis now from Florida State. They were able to slow both of them down. Malik Cunningham probably takes that to another level in terms of the test there.
Yeah, you're right, especially when it comes to the experience. But yeah, Clemson is really, that's a positive for Clemson as you look going into this game. They've had to deal with some mobile quarterbacks, especially recently. And Schrader and Travis had multiple 100-yard rushing games, probably averaged between the two of them. They probably averaged 85 rushing yards a game, but they had, when you combine their stats, they had negative rushing yards against, or maybe it was 3 rushing yards against Clemson, those two quarterbacks, and a lot of carries. So that was good to see, whether it's a spy technique or whatever Coach Venables is coming up with. They've been successful against those two teams. And now, of course, Syracuse, their running back, still at 157 yards, but Florida State's other guys didn't really bother Clemson, and they only had 68 rushing yards on 34 attempts, so 2 yards a carry for a team that was leading the nation in yards per carry in the month of October at 6.9 coming into that game. So the bottom line is, you're right, it's going to be important to defend Cunningham, but I do look for him to be a little bit more successful just because of his experience. He's a player who's got over 9,000 yards in terms of total offense in his career. So he's really been around the block the Syracuse and Florida State quarterbacks have.
Yeah, he's a better passer too, potentially, than both of them. I mean, Dabo brought that up. He's got 1,900 yards passing on the year. If you look at some of the guys he's targeted, Tyler Harrell has 34 yards per catch, which is just a ridiculous number. It's 8 catches for 272 yards. He has a 92-yard reception. Amari Huggins Bruce is 13 for 26, so a guy who has 20 per catch as well. So just guys that can make big explosive plays in the pass game. I think the term they were using was caging the quarterback is what they've been doing better in terms of the run. But also it's going to be on Mario Goodrich, Andrew Booth Jr., those guys, to not let those Louisville receivers behind them, because at any moment they can make a big play. And I guess that's where, again, it's encouraging. Mario Goodrich is one of those guys that Dabo mentioned, that in the age of the transfer portal, if had come earlier, maybe Mario wouldn't even be here. He's a guy who had to really sit, earn his time, become the best player he could be. He has, and he's kind of, I think he's even better than Andrew Booth Jr. in terms of yards per target. I don't know exactly what it is, but I've seen the stats. David Hale from ESPN has some of those, which are pretty good. He's actually better than Andrew Booth Jr. So, I mean, the development of Goodrich, Andrew Booth Jr., the level he's played, that should make people feel a little better, I guess, about going into this game. But there are some weapons that they're going to have to worry about.
Right. You look at the Louisville's receiving stats, John, they almost resemble something that you would see from Navy or Army or those option teams. Not quite as, but those teams will hit you with a big play action pass. Those two guys that you mentioned only have 21 catches in 8 games this year. So they're not, between the two of them, they're not even getting 3 catches per game. So they're not targeted that often, but they when they do get the ball, they make the most of it. As you said, they do throw a lot more to their tight end, and they have another receiver who's pretty good, and Watkins, who's come on soon. Recently, he's averaged 15 yards a catch. He had a 76-yard touchdown catch against NC State, in the early action. So, they don't throw a lot, but they have been effective. But as you said, I feel really good about the depth of the Clemson secondary. This year, I think maybe that's the reason why we've been pretty good in pass defense in that regard too, because we have fresh guys that can be around in the late in the game, and it's something that's troubled Louisville a bit. Louisville's given up; they've been outscored 90-61 in the fourth quarter this year. So I don't know if it's because parts of their defense have gotten run down, but that could be something to look for.
Yeah, and again, it comes back to containing the quarterback, because when you're facing a guy like Cunningham and he gets out of the pocket, if the defensive line doesn't do their job, it makes the corners, the defensive backs nervous. They end up creeping up. That's when somebody gets behind you. It's kind of a double-edged sword there with a guy who's got that kind of playmaking ability. It just reminds me of, at least when I was playing with video games as a child, I always want Mike Vick, because you can just roll him out, and all the defensive backs come up, and then you throw it over the top. Did you guys play Mike Vick back in the day when he was in the ACC, or did Clemson miss that show?
No, we actually we played him twice. So in 1999, which was he only played 2 years there. So 1999 went up there, Tommy Bowden's first year, and really had a strong competitive game with him. Brandon Streeter, our current quarterback coach, was the quarterback, and Coach Bowden played it smart. It was a real close game, but then Virginia Tech got I want to say it was a strip sack and a fumble return for a touchdown that kind of broke the game open. But Vic, he was just getting started. That might have only been his second or third game. We got a couple of interceptions, so although he was, effective and Virginia Tech won the game, we stayed right with him. And then in the end of the 2000 season, we played him in the Gator Bowl. We were 9-3, and I think they only lost one game, but they still ended up in the Gator Bowl. And that was a fascinating shootout between Mike Vick and Woody Dantzler, who was kind of Mike Vick light. Although don't tell Woody I said that. Woody was a pretty darn good quarterback. The next year, when Woody was a senior, he became the first quarterback in the history of college football to throw for 2,000 and run for 1,000 in the same season. So even Vic didn't do that previously in his career. But I think that Gator Bowl game ended up 41-27 or 41-20, something like that. So Vic was was a really good player, and he was a nightmare for opposing defenses.
Yeah. And the other, just bringing up some of these fascinating games, obviously there's that you're talking about Mike Vick back in the day, Lamar Jackson, obviously when Clemson played him, that was a thrilling game. I guess, where does that one rank for you? Because Dabo made an interesting comment also the post game against Florida State that everybody was like, what do you mean? When he said it was one of his top 5 favorite wins ever. And we're like, really? Against Florida State. I guess where did that Louisville game rank for you in terms of the ones that you remember, and does Florida State sit up there for you, Tim, or are there others in your top 5 if you were to rank them?
That little one was 42-36, and I was still obviously the SID, and so there was a lot of interest in that game. I might average 4 hours a night that week of that game because of all the media interest you had at the time. When you look at when that game was, Deshaun was kind of looked at as the top Heisman candidate, and Lamar Jackson had just had an unbelievable game in beating a third-ranked Florida State team in the second. So it was really a matchup of two guys you knew were going to be in the hunt for the Heisman at the end of the season, and obviously they were. They finished 1-2 in the Heisman. Deshaun unfortunately threw a few too many interceptions that year, although I believe that if we had a vote at the end of the 2016 bowl games and college football championships. I bet Deshaun and a revote would have won the Heisman Trophy, that season. So yeah, that was up there. Now, of course, 40 years for me, that's a lot of games. Now I kind of see where Dabo was coming from. I don't think he looked at it. It was more from what they overcame. I think a lot of people, maybe even including Dabo, with 7 minutes to go after that fumble, you thought, "Oh my God, what else could go, wrong? We're going to blow this game too." So, and with the injuries we had in the offensive line, so he said that to me on the pregame, on the post game interview before he went in and talked to the media. So he had said that to me too. I didn't challenge him on it. I mean, that's his list. That's his feeling. So I don't know where he was coming from as far as a meaningful game and an exciting game. Although, we've had games historically that you didn't think they were that big, that was kind of a game that, let you go forward and have some success from it. So that will remain to be seen.
Yeah, you talk about all that went wrong in that FSU game, and they eventually win. I guess going to look back to Louisville now, what has to go right for Clemson to win? Are there any players that you're looking for and saying that guy's got to play well, or I'm hoping that for a big performance there? Or is there any just aspect of the game statistically that you think is going to be the most important?
Well, based on what I saw in the most recent game between Louisville and NC State, and the fact that I think Louisville's rushing defense is better, I do think that we're going to have to hit some passes, maybe more so than we did against Florida State. Obviously, the Clemson's quarterback's got to play well, but I'm kind of waiting for a breakout game for Justin Ross, who had a great game at Louisville the last time we played them in 2019. So I kind of look for him to have a really good game. And I kind of look for on defense, Spector and Skalski got to have good games. They're going to have to be disciplined like they've been, and the defensive line in general can't overrush Cunningham to let him get outside the pocket and pick up some key plays, which is what we've done very well in the Syracuse and Florida State wins. I think doing similar things there is gonna be important. So I think those guys are important, and I think it's going to be a close game. I think Potter's going to have to make his field goals when he gets those opportunities, which he's done every game but one. So hopefully he'll get back. Dabo said Monday he was right back on the beam on practice. So at practice. So hopefully that'll be the case.
Yeah, I'm interested in just a guy who's emerged a little bit recently, Barrett Carter, the true freshman. I mean, that's a guy with 4.5 speed who can run with Malik Cunningham. Will he factor into, just watching him and helping cage him, and Trenton Simpson, his buddy at the strong side nickel linebacker position. He had a huge game against Florida State with how many sacks was it? I don't have it in front of me. I forget it was 2.5 or it was a lot. It was multiple.
Well, they changed things around on the stats after the game. Not to get off on this subject, they took away a sack from Xavier Thomas because they have this stupid rule in college where if you sack the quarterback behind the line of scrimmage and he knocks the ball forward, and actually if it gets back to the line of scrimmage, it's not a sack. Which, of course, in the NFL, they credit a sack, and then you have loose ball yardage, which is the way it should be scored. I mean, he sacked the quarterback behind the line of scrimmage, but there's a lot of scoring rules in the NCAA that I disagree with, but that's for another time.
Yeah. All kinds of things you guys never knew went into the sausage here in terms of the stats and everything else. But
to answer your question, Simpson had a really good game.
He did have a really good game. That's the point. So we'll see how he rushes the passer, how the defensive line does. Justin Ross, like you said, took a step forward. Maybe he'll take another step. It'll be interesting to see how it all unfolds at Louisville. Again, thanks guys for listening. This is the countdown to kickoff feature. Again, we also have a newsletter that you guys can partake in other than just the articles in the newspaper. You can kind of see some extra analysis and anecdotes and jokes that I make that you can get there. The Tiger Take, postandcourier.com/the Tiger Take. And again, thanks to Tim Bourret for coming by and speaking with us about the upcoming game. We'll see you around, Tim, and see you guys.
Good to be with you, John.